Methane emissions from permafrost. New tools will yield better estimates of the methane gas emissions. This is by Bev Betlowski, University of Alberta, Canada, on phys.org. New tools developed by University of Alberta researchers will better track methane emissions from northern permafrost ecosystems, ultimately allowing for more accurate global predictions of future greenhouse gas emissions. An extensive new emission data set and map of northern wetlands and lakes will greatly improve estimates of current and future methane emissions, said Mackenzie Kuhn, who contributed to the research to earn her PhD from University of Alberta, Faculty of Agriculture, Life and Environmental Sciences. She said, one of the things that has limited us in the past from making accurate estimates is not having adequate maps of northern wetlands and lakes at a large circumpolar scale, as well as corresponding emission measurements for those ecosystems. It's exciting that we are starting to have the tools we need. Now let's remember that most of the Yukon territories, northern territories in Canada, are not populated. Now methane is released naturally from the warming sediment and soil in northern lakes and wetlands, and being able to closely measure those emissions adds another layer of accuracy to calculating global greenhouse gas emissions, Kuhn said. She said, knowing current and future greenhouse gas emissions from natural ecosystems help us predict future temperatures of the atmosphere, which will help policymakers decide how much we need to reduce human sources of methane emissions to keep atmospheric temperatures livable. She said, we can't stop the lakes and wetlands from emitting methane, but as humans, we can control how much methane we produce through fossil fuel use. The tools and findings developed through a trio of recent studies can help improve future greenhouse gas emission research that will be vital to climate policy discussions, such as the 2021 United Nations Climate Change Conference, Kuhn said. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box. This is one example of the dramatic permafrost, how close it is to the surface. As you can see, the surface just covered by very thin soil and some greenery. And this is another road cut through the permafrost of Siberia. Now, she said, when talking about emissions reduction goals, those goals need to incorporate the knowledge from studies like these. And if we don't include natural methane emissions from the north, we won't meet those overall goals, she said. Mapping wetlands and lakes on a global scale. One of the climate research tools, a comprehensive data set of geographic information, maps the distribution of different wetlands and lake types at a large scale never before done for the Arctic boreal region, taking in Russia, Finland, Sweden, Norway, Greenland, Iceland, Canada, and Alaska. So it's basically all of the Arctic. The Boreal Arctic Wetland and Lake Dataset, BALD for short, BAWLD, improves on previous maps, which included only 1 or 2 types of wetlands and lakes. Previous maps at this scale did not take into account the wide variety of both low and high emitting wetlands and lakes or the magnitude of their emissions, Kuhn said. This now allows us to more accurately estimate methane emissions. Kuhn, Professor David Oldfeld, and a team of other researchers also created BALD, B-A-W-L-D, database of methane emissions recorded in all published studies about the northern boreal and Arctic regions, a compilation of almost 2,000 sites and 200 scientific papers. The dataset was built to match the wetlands and lake types in the BALD map and will help other climate researchers interested in methane emissions from the region, providing context for new methane emissions measured in the field. It can also be used to help build and improve new emission models, converging towards more accurate emission estimates. In addition, Kuhn led a related study published in AGU Advances showing that a pattern of high methane emissions found in southern boreal lakes will also likely emerge in similar northern lakes in the north as the north continues to warm. The researchers measured methane emissions over 3 years from 20 ecologically similar lakes found in a 1,600 kilometer span between central Alberta and Mackenzie River Delta near the Arctic Ocean. Kuhn found that the emissions were 8 times greater in the southernmost region than in the northern lakes. Kuhn said the southern lakes may act as a proxy for how lakes in the north will act. As the temperature increases in the northern regions, those lakes will likely start to release more methane, as we observed in the southern lakes. By combining all of the information available through these new studies, the researchers were able to also show that current methane emissions from natural ecosystems in the north could be less than previously estimated. Kuhn said, however, the Arctic and boreal region is still highly influenced by the effects of warming temperatures, of course. Collectively, the research helps equip scientists with more exact knowledge about the role the North plays in overall methane emissions. She said the products of this research can also be used by other scientists working on the question of future greenhouse gas projections. She said, we hope that other researchers asking the same kinds of questions can use the map and emission database to build and improve their own methane emission models. We want different groups using different approaches and building different models, because once those findings start converging, then we know we are getting close to a more accurate estimate of northern emissions. Kuhn and Oldfeld plan to use the new map and database in a follow-up study aimed at pinpointing current methane emissions from the north, and also to look at further emissions under different climate change scenarios. This is by University of Alberta on AGU Advances on phys.org. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support.